When you think of the best shooting guards ever, or the best shooting guards of the 1990s, obviously Michael Jordan would be the first guy who comes to mind. Because he was the player to watch in the 1990s. At the same time, a lot of other great shooting guards got overshadowed back then. There were plenty of legit star shooting guards that never got the recognition they deserved. Mitch Richmond was one of them, a 6-time All-Star and part of the iconic Run TMC trio in Golden State. Reggie Miller, we all know him as a clutch player, one of the greatest shooters of all time, but even he gets overlooked and his overall game is underrated. And then there's Clyde Drexler, who was, in my opinion, the second best shooting guard of the Michael Jordan era. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today we're going to talk about the NBA career of Clyde Drexler, a name that we all recognize and occasionally comes up in basketball conversations, but few fans actually know who he is and what his game is about. In this video, we're gonna take a look at that. But before we start, I'd like to give a shout out to my sponsor, SeatGeek. SeatGeek is an app that aggregates ticket prices from all over the web to help you find the best deals for games, concerts, Broadway shows, and other events. The prices marked in green are good, while the ones in red are bad. I've used the app to buy tickets before, and the process was very smooth. The app is very easy to use, and you can also see the view from your seats before you buy your tickets, which is my favorite feature. Use my promo code ANDY at checkout to get $20 off your first order. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. Alright, let's get started. Coming into the NBA, after a solid 3 years with the Houston Cougars in college, Drexler wasn't considered as a top-tier pick. He was actually drafted just 14th overall in the 1983 draft, joining the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers at the time were already a well-established team. They made the playoffs recently and had a solid roster, which included guys like Calvin Nance, Fat Lever, Jim Paxson, and Michael Thompson, Clay's father. There was simply no room for Drexler to blossom, but he still had a productive rookie season, averaging about 8 points a game in 17 minutes a game. Fast forward 1 year later and it's time for the 1984 NBA Draft. At this time, the biggest trade in NBA history almost happened. The Blazers offer the Rockets Clyde Drexler and the number 2 pick of the '84 draft to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Ralph Sampson. However, the Rockets rejected the offer, but if they did accept, they could have had a core of Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, and used the number 2 pick to draft Michael Jordan. That would have been the best big three in the history of basketball, and possibly the greatest team of all time. But it didn't happen, and Drexler remained on the Trailblazers, at least for now. In his second year in the league, he made a massive jump, with the Blazers trading away a bunch of players and making some major roster changes. Drexler found himself as one of the focal points of the team. He was now the starting shooting guard, averaging over 31 minutes a game and 17 points a game. And over the next few years after that, Drexler would blossom into a superstar, averaging over 27 a game. Making All-Star teams, All-NBA teams, he was now recognized as one of the league's premier players. His game primarily centered around slashing to the rim and his uncanny ability to finish. His nickname, Clyde the Glide Drexler, was given to him because of how smooth his scoring was. While Jordan was known for his ridiculous hang time and his ability to contort his body, Drexler was known for his elegance and effortless playstyle. When he went up for a dunk or layup, it looked like he was gliding in midair. On top of that, Drexler was also a great mid-range shooter. He was a decent defender too, although he was not up to par with guys like Jordan or Pippen. Drexler didn't really shoot many threes until later in his career, but when he was younger, he had a very smooth jump shot. His jump shot was good enough to where defenders had to respect it. It opened up the paint and allowed him to blow by guys who were guarding him too tightly. Unfortunately, as Drexler found success as an individual player, it was not the same success as the team. In his first 6 seasons in the NBA, him and the Blazers got knocked out of the first round 5 of the 6 times. It was a disappointing start to his career, but Drexler was never a confrontational guy. He didn't really have many mishaps with the front office, nor did he complain about the lack of talent on his team, or any of that stuff. For a superstar, he was a really quiet guy. When he failed to live up to expectations during the playoffs and when his numbers and shooting dropped off, there wasn't much criticism because people weren't really paying attention to Portland. However, that would all change by 1989, when they hired a brand new head coach. You might have heard of him. It's Rick Adelman. Back then, his stint with Portland was his first ever experience as a coach, and fans were unsure of him at first, but he became the coach that this team needed. An article on NBA.com described Drexler as a quiet star in a city removed from intense media attention on a team that faltered in the postseason. Drexler didn't always receive the acclaim that his stellar statistics should have earned him. But as Portland developed into a contender, however, recognition of Drexler's exploits followed. The 1989-90 season would be a tremendous success. Led by Clyde Drexler and Terry Porter, the Blazers would make it all the way to the NBA Finals. It was a surprise to everyone, jumping from a playoff team that would consistently lose in the first round to the NBA Finals. The matchup between the Blazers and the Pistons was a bit unorthodox, two defensive powerhouses who were decent offensively. In the series, Isaiah Thomas was considered as the best player on the floor, but Drexler matched him point for point. However, the Blazers would lose 3 straight games at home, ultimately losing the series in 5. Despite the loss, this was considered a very successful season for the team, and it was only going to get better from here. In the following season, the Blazers would win a franchise record 63 games, a record that still stands as of today. Poised to make another run at the championship, they got off to a great start in the 1991 playoffs. But then it went downhill. In the conference finals, they would face the Lakers and found themselves going down 3-1. They could not come back from that and would lose in 6. Drexler put up some great numbers, but they were below his season averages, while Magic Johnson severely outplayed him. There was apparently some beef between the two of them, but I'm not exactly sure why. According to Jack McCallum's book about the 1992 Dream Team, where Drexler would get snubbed from the team, when talking about the snub, he made a comment about Magic, saying that he was only on the Dream Team because people felt bad that he had HIV. He couldn't play much by that time. He couldn't guard his shadow. But you have to understand what was going on then. Everybody kept waiting for Magic to die. Every time he'd run up the court, everybody would feel sorry for the guy, and he'd get all that benefit of the doubt. What Drexler said seemed kinda mean, but years later, Drexler denied that he ever said these things and that him and Magic were good friends now. Anyway, after a somewhat disappointing playoff run in 1991, the Blazers would reorganize and have another stellar season. In the 1992 playoffs, they would reach the finals once again, in the long-awaited matchup against the Chicago Bulls. Unfortunately, once again, the Blazers failed to capture the title. Michael Jordan seriously outplayed Clyde Drexler, and while it was expected to be a great matchup, Drexler got absolutely destroyed. He still led the Blazers in scoring, but head-to-head with Jordan, it wasn't even close. In Paul Allen's memoir, Idea Man, he talked about the 92 finals. There was a moment when Allen praised Drexler for his excellent defense on Jordan. He said, "Clyde, that was a brilliant steal, you read Jordan perfectly." However, Clyde's response was this: Stop, you don't understand. Most guys have 2 or 3 go-to moves. Jordan has 9. I guessed right, that's all. I got lucky. Sometimes you get the bear, but usually the bear gets you. That was a pretty good summary of what happened the entire series. Jordan was unstoppable, and the Blazers would fall in 6 games. They would never return back to the finals in the Clyde Drexler era. That was their last chance. A couple years later, with Drexler getting older and slower, and the team was not a serious contender anymore, the Blazers honored his trade request, sending him to the Houston Rockets. There, Drexler would team up with his former college teammate, Hakeem Olajuwon. While the Rockets initially got some flack for blowing up their team to get an aging Clyde Drexler, it worked out pretty well. He would immediately become the team's second best scorer, and in the playoffs, he would not disappoint. The Rockets, as a 6th seed, overcame all odds and won the 1995 championship, back-to-back titles for the Rockets, and the first and only championship of Drexler's NBA career. Afterwards, despite some efforts by the Rockets front office to build a super team and try to make a last-ditch effort to win another title, it ultimately did not work out, and by the end of the 1998 season, Drexler would retire. So, how good was he actually? Well, he was a 10-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA, and eventually became a Hall of Famer, so he was pretty damn good. I'd say definitely a top 10 shooting guard of all time. Probably arguable that he's a top 5 or top 6 shooting guard. He also never missed the playoffs a single time in his entire career. That's pretty impressive, very few players have ever accomplished that. Playing in the same era as Michael Jordan would naturally cause him to get overlooked. And even though he was a superstar, he was a quiet, reserved guy and played in a small market for most of his career. In recent times, he's been a commentator for the Houston Rockets. Not many people talk about him anymore or know what he's done, but I hope this video gave you guys a better understanding of his career. Anyway, that's all folks, let me know your thoughts on Clyde Drexler. Thank you everyone so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.